Okay, so we're still holding in Siman Kufyud. We made a decision to go through the various seifim klalim of the Shach. 36 seifim or 36 klalim categories of Sfeka. And I thought we would be able to go through them a little bit faster, but
no rush.
No rush.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. There's a lot of halachas to be learned from these klalim. So this is really like learning any other halacha.
And look, this is a great opportunity because if you really see the complexity and you can really understand it, it's a tremendous opportunity to grow.
It shows you how one goes through the analysis of a situation to make a psak halacha too, in taking into consideration all sorts of conditions, criteria that may make the outcome different.
It teaches us to be careful to jump to conclusions.
Sure. And these klalim, as usual, klalim, generally speaking, are important. There are different kinds of klalim. There are klalim, for example, on how to learn Gemara Rashi. There's a klalim even on how to understand the Rambam, how to understand the Shulchan Aruch when he writes two opinions. Which one does he really hold like? So klalim are important. Certain rules that help us figure out what the halacha is. And the halacha may not be very, very clear. There are gray areas or where there is no specific halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, but in taking the information that we have, for example, in taking the klalim that this Torah set up for us, right, on how the Chachamim were doirish, the Korim from the Torah, right, Shana Torah Nidreshes bohem, yeah, Kal v'chomer and so forth, you can see how Tanoim, how Amoraim were able to arrive at their conclusions. Of course, starting off with a pasuk and learning it out from an extra word or the omission of a word and so forth. So we're dealing now with Sfekas. And a Safek is a big deal. A Safek is a doubt. Safek means that we're not sure what to do. We're not sure what to do could be because we don't know what we're dealing with. Is this kosher or this is treif to begin with? Or we don't know something else. We know it's treif. The problem is it got mixed up. And now I don't know which one it is. Or, it could become even more complex. It got mixed up twice or three times, as we've seen before. It spilled. Remember that? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Remember the case where got into the pot? We're trying to determine if there's roiv or shishim. Roiv we know there is, but we don't know if there's shishim. There's liquid. You need 60 times the heter to be mevatel the iser, if there's tam. But it's spilled nishbach. So what do? So we started off saying an important klal about safek deraisa in general. Since the deraisa will always be stricter than the rabbanon. The deraisa means that something is a prohibition from the Torah. If something is a prohibition from the Torah, it has serious consequences. You could sometimes have chorus. Not always. There are malchus too. Lashes. Lashes are bad too.
No, I was going to say, let's not underestimate
just
lashes.
Iranians who got lashes.
No, it's like, believe it or not, I would see them. I was there. Yeah. They drinking alcohol, tie them up to the pole, 100 lashes with a wire.
Wow.
And any time that the pants would fall down on their feet, there was a guy that would lift it up, and they would repeat.
Oh my. Okay. Anyway, the Torah, even in giving out malchus, was very, very careful. Don't add one extra one. Don't abuse it. Don't overdo it. Be sensitive to the person who's getting it. We look at it as a kapara. There's no such thing as punishment. It's a kapara for something that was done. And of course, this is something that was done intentionally only. Something that was accidental, there's a different kind of kapara and tikkun for it. Whether it was a korban or not.
The shogeg.
Yeah, shogeg. Yeah, this is only the mezeh when there would be malkot or there would be some other punishment, some other kapara. But when it's b'shogeg, it's a different kind of way of dealing with it. All right. So safek deraisa is lechumra. We have that klal. When you have a doubt because it is serious, it's lechumra. Now, who said that it's l'chumra? Did the Torah really mean to say that you should be machmer, or did the Rabbanon? So that was a famous machloket that we spoke about. Some say, we're talking about Rishonim here, that Safek D'Oraisa l'chumra is a D'Rabbanan. It's a D'Rabbanan, meaning that in reality, Safek Torah is a Safek. It's not more than that. But the Rabbanan are the ones that said that. No, I'm talking about the I'm sorry. Let me take that back. In Sfeka, we had a machloket.
No, you were right.
Yeah, no. But I wanted to start off with that. Mm-hmm. In a Sfeka, the reason why we allowed it, because the suffix we don't allow a suffix d'oraisa. So the reason why by Sfeka, when you have a double suffix in a d'oraisa, the reason why we're lenient is because you end up having a d'Rabbanan.
A suffix d'Rabbanan.
You end up having a d'Rabbanan. Having a d'Rabbanan, and a suffix d'Rabbanan is lekula. Okay? Because of the first suffix, right? Since the first suffix, you end up having it as a d'Rabbanan, so therefore suffix and a d'Rabbanan is a suffix d'Rabbanan lekula. Okay? Well, that's those that learn that way. There are those who learn that the koach of Sfeka stems from the fact that it's similar to the din of roiv. And you're basically, statistically, increasing the chances that this is mutter. Or there's those who have the opinion that hold that the suffix Sfeka creates a situation where the chances of an Isra are so minute that there's basically no Isra left. Okay, different ways of interpreting it. But you know what's interesting? All these svaras, all these ways of explaining the same suffix or Sfeka is important, because sometimes there's something called nafkamina. There can be a nafkamina, there can be a difference in a situation depending on how you hold what the svara is. And we will see that soon. An example of that. If you hold like this, what is the din here? If you hold like this, what would be the din? Would the din always be the same? No, not necessarily. Very, very interesting.
And I have a quick question regarding the roiv.
Yeah.
I was wondering about something.
Yeah.
Is the point of the roiv that what I have in front of me is unlikely to be a prohibition, something prohibited, and therefore you can treat it as something permissible? Or is the roiv, does it say that the fact that, or the percentage that would make it prohibited, that would allow me to prohibit it as a rabbi, as a poisik, is so little, I'm not allowed to interfere with the person's freedom on that basis? In other words, I have so little weight in prohibiting it because of the uncertainty that I'm not allowed to tell someone, you can't have it. Of course, if he himself decides that, I'd rather stay away from it. He's welcome to do so. But I can't come to him and tell him, you can't eat it because there's a 25% chance that it's prohibited. That doesn't give me the authority to usher it. Is it this side or that side?
Yeah.
Or maybe both, a little of each. I don't know.
I would look at it completely differently. We're talking about a mitziut.
So that would be the first case.
It's more like the first, maybe, yeah. It's more like a reality of its own, which is what the way the Beis Yosef learns about why if you have a suffix in the guf and a suffix in the taaruvos, remember we said that would not qualify for Sfeka. One is in the guf, and one is in the taaruvos. It got mixed up. I had a suffix if this is treif or not. You're going to get mixed up. Oh no, it's not enough. Oh great, I can make a Sfeka. I have a double whammy, as they say in English, right? Double whammy or whatever. Two Sfekas. No, that would not qualify for a real Sfeka. Even though you have two, it's not a real Sfeka where they strengthen each other. Why? Because one is in the guf and one is in the taruvos. What's wrong with that? Okay, so we had different svaras for that. The Beis Yosef learns that Sfeka doesn't come about by just adding Sfekas and any Sfekas. They have to be related to each other, right? It has to be also a mitziut of real doubts about the same thing, not two separate things, to qualify as a Sfeka.
In other words, the second doubt has to increase the doubtfulness of what the first doubt already started off with.
100%, yeah. And whereas the Ramah, like Moshe, I think, whatever, says that you have a situation of the first suffix rendering an Isur D'Oraisa, an Isur Vadai. So you're not really left anymore with two Sfekas, you're left with one suffix. If the first suffix is already rendering or giving you the answer to the situation, suffix deraisa, the chumrah, then the second one is not really anything because, it's something, but it's alone. It doesn't have the friend, the other suffix with it anymore.
That's by Roiv. No? But according to those who say that Sfeka is a question of it, the first one renders it a suffix Rabbanan, and then the second suffix makes it
we're talking about the
L'chula.
Maaseh as far as Sfeka helping us.
Right.
When suffix is in the goof and suffix is in the Taaruvot.
I see what you're saying.
In that cloud, we have two explanations.
Okay. Yeah, I understand
So,
what you're saying.
and two ways of looking at it. So according to this one, if the first suffix renders it an Isser Deraisa, then the second one is alone, on its own. So I say, wait a minute. So it comes along the Melicha and adds something that can be very helpful to us. And it's a good question. Well, what happens if it's Lo Niddah, the famous Lo Niddah, right? Which comes about in Basar B'Chalav, comes about several times in Taaruvos, where it can, apparently it doesn't make a difference here and there. That if you only know about at the end about the two, then it's really one. It's one problem, it's one suffix. And this helps, it will help us with the following examples too on how we view a situation. Here, if it's Lo Niddah, we're actually looking at a situation which has multiple questions perhaps, but we're looking at it at the same time. And since it's at the same time, maybe it would be a Sfeka, and the Messiah said it would be. So Niddah afterwards, or Lo Niddah in the beginning, can and will make a difference, especially if you interpret it in a certain way. In other words, depending on how you see the situation, what the problem is. In this particular problem of Safek Beguf and Safek Be'isur, it may make a difference.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly, then if there is a suffix, if this was actually a treifa,
right,
and there is and then it fell into a taruvas,
right,
the only time when I can't combine the two sfekas is already if I knew before it fell in that it's a treifa. But if I gain knowledge of it having been a treifa after it already fell into the taruvas, then I can't add it up to a sfeka. Is that what you were saying? If I understood you correctly, what you were saying was, when is it that I can't combine the suffix of a treifa and the suffix of a taruvas? Is that I already knew that it's a treifa before it fell in. But if I didn't know, then I cannot combine it.
Suffix.
I knew about the suffix treifa before it fell in.
I knew about the suffix.
Right, the suffix.
Right.
But if I don't know about the suffix treifa before it falls in,
right,
and only after it fell in, then both of these things become known to me simultaneously.
That's correct. I discovered them both.
Now, what if they don't become known to me simultaneously, but it's after it fell in? In other words, Metzias Vais, the suffix treifa fell into the taruvas. Right. Now I find out that there is a suffix treifa in the taruvas, but only later I find out that that suffix treifa is already in the taruvas. Right now, when I find out there's a suffix treifa, I didn't know it's in the taruvas.
Right, but now it's in there.
So what determines it? My knowledge or when it fell in?
Yeah, you asked last time.
I did?
Yeah. Yeah.
Haven't changed much, I guess.
No, it's okay. It's happening more or less anyway at the same time. Because something is prompting a discovery here.
Okay.
Like in law, like in courts, there's a discovery. Is that what they call it? Is that the term, or is there another term for it?
It's a good term of that.
Well, let's say for instance, the balabais, the man is standing at the door, and someone knocks at the door. He opens the door. Right. The butcher comes. He says, right, "Did you take that package that was standing next to the door?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "That wasn't for you. That was the treif. I was going to send it away." Right. So he runs into the kitchen. He tells his wife, "Don't use that meat I brought." And she says, "It's already in the salad." Yeah. So now first he found out it's treifa. It was already in the salad. Yeah. And now he finds out it's in the salad. What's the din? Is it Sfeka or not?
It's Sfeka. Yeah,
it is.
Because it's happening more or less at the same time, even though a few seconds apart.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's not a determination has been made. That hasn't happened yet. That has already happened, whether you know of it or not.
Uh-huh.
Somebody else knows of it.
Uh-huh.
Remember, the question was...
And the butcher that knows it?
The question was somewhat different last time. Do you need to be aware, or can somebody else be aware?
So the kula, you're saying the wife already knew that it's in the taruvas. Yeah. But l'chumra, you could say the butcher already knew it before the wife put it in the taruvas. Yeah. You could say the same thing l'chumra too.
That too. But I guess that does not concern
So which
them.
way does the Niddah go there?
That does not concern them, maybe. But it depends.
Maybe it depends who eats it.
Yeah, to him, yeah. It's to him. The suffix is to him, maybe. Yeah. All right. Anyway, let's not get too hung up on that. Just reviewing a few of the klalim from the past. We did, of course, have some questions on the Mechaber and the Ramah about the suffix treifa that was in a Taaruvos. Why did the Mechaber have to bring up that halacha all together? That you need to have roiv, even though it's a suffix treifa, you can't get away with it by Sfeka because it's suffix in the guf and suffix in the Taaruvos. Why can't you say it's a suffix derabbanan lekula? So I'm giving you already a little bit of akdama. We're going to talk about it next, soon. You could have easily said, okay, let's forget Sfeka. It doesn't work. Suffix in the guf, suffix in the Taaruvos does not constitute a double suffix. But you can easily have here a suffix derabbanan lekula. After all, the chumras before were somewhat understandable. We had a chumrah of something which is a davar chashuv. Davar chashuv means it's not nisbatel afilu be'elef. And for it to ever be nisbatel, it's not nisbatel be'elef. Can there be? Yes, there is one way. 3 Taaruvos. Remember that one? 3 Taaruvos. Wow. Special din. Why? Because the first one doesn't count. First one doesn't count. The first one is already an Isser. So the only time you really have a Sfeka is by the 3rd time, in a sense. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. That's one way of understanding how 3 Taaruvos work.
Because on the first one, the importance of that piece of meat renders everything in that pot aser.
Exactly. Yeah.
So whatever falls out of the pot, it's not a suffix
exactly.
Isser. It's an Isser vadai.
Exactly. So that was about double chashuv. Okay. So comes along the seif in Kuf Yud seif test and tells suffix treifa shenisar becheros kulon asuros until you have in the heter enough to mevatel the Isser. Imu midvar misbatim, of course. Why? Because the suffix originally begufa, so therefore you cannot be matim Sfeka. So we asked, why does the Mechaber have to bring? You told us by a vadai treifa, a vadai, you need 3 Taaruvos. What's the importance of this thing? And why tell us an explanation too? You know why this won't work? Because it's suffix beguf. You already told us by vadai treifa that you need 3 Taaruvos. Kol sheken here. I mean, what's the chiddush? What do you need this halacha for? And the question can be also said about the Ramah. Yeshamim, that tam is the asu hoil that suffix hu isu deoraisa. Therefore, another reason, another way of looking at it, not the goof and the Taaruvos, but it's an isur deoraisa right away. Okay, well, who needs this? So one explanation, the Ber Heitev's explanation was that, over there it's a davar chashuv, here it's not a davar chashuv. Very easy. He wants to make simplified. Over there it's talking about a davar chashuv, and here it's not talking about a davar chashuv. Right? But I like the Aruch HaShulchan's explanation. Let me see if I can find it, because sometimes I like to read it from the inside instead of reading it by heart. The Aruch HaShulchan says that the Shittas HaMechaber, it's one of the Mechaber. Let's see here. Yeah. By the way, you can find this, I think, in the Shach. Yeah. So in the Aruch HaShulchan, it says what you need 3 Taaruvos is because the Rabbanan made the first Taaruvos also, like we said, right? Like a Vada Yisur. So therefore, you need another 2 Taaruvos that it should be Sfeka. But here, by a suffix treifa, you're beginning the whole thing with a suffix. You're beginning with a suffix. So since you begin with a suffix, 1 suffix is enough. So what's the Mechaber being Mechadish? He's being Mechadish that Sfeka, where one is in the guf and one is in the Taaruvos, it's not a Sfeka, that's all. Yeah. In other words, to begin with a suffix is definitely easier than to begin with a vadai suffix.
Or with a vadai Isser.
I'm sorry, with a vadai Isser, because then you need 3. Okay. Anyway, I gave you this as a little bit of introduction because we're going to go into some klalim that may relate to some things that we learned in the past. So it was good to refresh.
Absolutely, as always.
These halachas.
Absolutely, review as well.
Okay, so klal yutes. One second here.
getting an audio recording also, by the way.
Okay, very good, because I may need it. Yeah, running out of battery. Okay, Klal Yutes, Safek be'Isur Torah shel Nesiba Chitzonit. We have a Safek of an Isur Torah, but for an external reason, it has become a Safek D'Rabbanan. That's Klal Yutes in the Shach, Sfeka. This is taken from the Darch and Moshe that asked as follows. According to the Ri, who holds that a Safek Treifer, remember we just spoke about Safek Ri Sif Tes, that was mixed in others, and therefore we no longer have a heter of Sfeka, or we never use the heter of Sfeka. Nevertheless, it should be mutter mit din Sfeka D'Rabbanan L'Kula. Because according to the Torah, we have Bitul B'Roiv, right? Bitul B'Roiv. According to the Torah, something is in mixed in the majority, it's Bitul B'Roiv. And he explains that the raya is, if a Safek, a raya from here, I should say, that we see from this that if we're dealing with an Isur Torah that has been nisgalgel, has been transformed to an Isur D'Rabbanan from a different angle, because it's mixed over here, the Safek will still be Asur. So even though Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kulo, this is not a real Safek D'Rabbanan, because it starts off as a Safek D'Oraisa that has become now a question or a Safek in a D'Rabbanan. Because really there's Roiv. So it's a Safek D'Oraisa. Is this kosher or treif? D'Oraisa. This Safek now has become a Safek D'Rabbanan. So Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kulo, remember I just asked that question. I gave you the halacha that it's a Safek treif that got mixed in a Taaruvot. We should say Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kulo. It's okay we don't say Sfeka because one is Beguf and one is Taaruvot. But what about Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kulo? Right now it's a D'Rabbanan. The question is a D'Rabbanan. I have Roiv. Right? Does everyone understand? It's a good question. So this cloud came about as a result of this analysis, of this question, that according to the Ri, it was the Darch Moshe says, basically you can ask, according to the Ri, that Safek Treifa that was mixed in with the Taaruvot, that we say we don't have a het of Sfeka, at least it should be mutter midrabban, Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. Elamai, we could say that from this we learn that a Safek that is meikar adin is a deraisa, but becomes from a different angle a Safek D'Rabbanan. You don't say Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But then you would have to say each time you have an Isser that's mixed with Roiv, but you don't have 60, you wouldn't have a Safek. You wouldn't have Safek. No, you would. You don't know which meat it is. But by equal things, we don't need 60. Yeah, we do. The Rabbanan, we need 60.
Yeah, we need 60.
Exactly. So why don't you say Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula on each one? Each time you have even a Vadai Isser got mixed with a Vadai piece of treifa milk meat, got mixed with other meats. Now I take out a meat and I know I have Roiv, but I don't have 60.
Right.
So what I'm going to say, the 60 requirement is a requirement of the Rabbanan. I don't know which meat it is.
No. Okay, hold that. Hold it.
Okay, I'll hold it
because it will come up soon.
Okay.
Hold it because you can claim that perhaps in other situations.
It would be misbattled the whole.
But once we start understanding the logic of how Safek, the rise of Safek D'Rabbanan works and how Sfeka works, we will see.
I'm just saying that's why it can't work, because it would be misbattled the whole.
No. We will see where we can apply it or not. Mm-hmm. So here he's telling us you can't apply Safek D'Rabbanan to this kind of a situation because it starts off as a Safek D'Oraisa.
Very interesting.
But wait a minute. But it ends up as a Safek D'Rabbanan. No, but if it starts up and it ends and it's a different Safek altogether, it's a separate angle. It's not about the same thing. You don't say Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. So here, it comes out that here from this halacha and sif tes, we have two halachas. One, that you don't say Sfeka when it's beguf and when it's betaruvos, and that you don't say Sfeka D'Rabbanan in this situation where it starts off as a Safek D'Oraisa. Okay. There is a machlokes.
Rabbi Kin, quick question. But with that final analysis, the second point that you said, wouldn't that contradict those opinions that Sfeka is a matter of the first Safek turning it into a Rabbanan and thereby making it a Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula? We had two opinions why Sfeka works.
Right.
One is Roiv.
Right.
One is the first. We're starting off with the Oraisa.
Right.
So this opinion of the Ramah, wouldn't it be contradicting the idea that the first suffix made it a Derabanan, because the Chumrah of suffix Oraisa, the Chumrah is a Derabanan, so now the second suffix is a suffix Derabanan.
Right.
Because it started out as, the whole Inyan was starting out as an Issa Doraisa. And he says if it started out as an Issa Doraisa, you can't say Sfeka. So you would be contradicting that opinion that the whole basis of Sfeka is that the suffix Doraisa is a Derabanan, and therefore the second suffix is a suffix Derabanan Lekula. What the Ramah is saying here would be contradicting that opinion.
Remember, that din was a kind of Sfeka.
I'm saying, but that didn't start it off with the Doraisa.
Right.
Said suffix,
Right.
became a Derabanan.
Good point. A very good point. That starts off like that too. Nevertheless, we say Safek Derabanan Lekula, but that's the koach or the chidush of Sfeka, right?
So why don't we say here also chidush to Sfeka?
Here, the Shach is telling us a klal that Safek Derabanan Lekula is not when you start off having a Safek Doraisa. Here we're not talking about Sfeka necessarily per se.
No, but I'm saying we had two competing interpretations, ideas, explanations. Why Sfeka works? We had two competing explanations. One was Roy.
No, but that's Sfeka. Here we're talking about even on a suffix that's not a Sfeka. We agree that this is not a Sfeka. Why? Safek beguf, Safek betaruvos. It's not. Well, let's treat this as a regular Safek Derabanan.
Right.
The whole Safek is a Derabanan.
Right.
No, he started off as a Sfeka Deraisa.
But if that is an argument...
No, so there he's telling us. He's telling us that the Rabbanan are not matir this kind of a Safek Derabanan Lekula. They're not. He's telling us...
Because it started as a Doraisa.
Right.
So by the Sfeka, it also started as a Doraisa. And then it became a Dorabanan. So you're saying that they're the Rabbanan are matir because it's a Sfeka?
When it's a real Sfeka, it's
so the Rabbanan are matir.
Yes.
And here they're not matir.
They're not.
Would that be
because a real Sfeka, remember we said it has special powers.
So it's not because of plausibility, it's because of a decision. That's how they decided they're matir. Here they're not.
But they were matir Sfeka
because they respect the weight of it.
Sfeka has tremendous koach. That's all. Has a tremendous koach.
But it has this koach because they mattered it.
Yeah, but what is the koach of Sfeka? That the chances are, even though it's the Rabbanon, we explained that still, in essence, let's avoid interpretation. In essence, what we're saying is this thing has many Sfekas.
If we're avoiding interpretations, then of course they're not going to be the contradiction because the contradiction is in the interpretation.
I don't know about that 100%.
I mean, if there is a contradiction, my point was that it's if you're going to set aside the interpretation, there is no contradiction.
But I'm skipping that. I have to skip that
because
it's a separate category, and that category has apparently some advantages over Roiv, has some advantages over Safek Derabanan, a regular Safek Derabanan. As we saw last time, some Sfekas Derabanan they're not all created equal, right? If it was Xera, remember if it was Xera, they were not so easy about allowing you a Safek. It's a Safek Derabanan. No, if it's Xera, they made it like a Vada Isser. Even if you have a Safek Legabe, it's Xera. So same thing, the Chachamim are not easy.
I'm just saying. Right. So, but by virtue of saying that, what gives the Sfeka such a power is that they decided there, even though it starts out as a Da'araisa, not to allow it. Yes, to allow it, even though it started off as a Da'araisa.
Yeah.
And their decision to do so, that's what gives it a Chashivas.
Of course, that's right. That's their decision, All right, so real quickly, let me just go through some ideas here. Piskei Tshuva, very interesting Piskei Tshuva, who brings down in Machloikes Legabe Kalim. You had a Tarnegolet, you had a chicken that had a Safek Treifa, and it was cooked in a Gdera. And that Gdera somehow later on waited around for 24 hours. And the Blias became Pogum. So now we have a Safek Derabanan on the Gdera.
By Safek.
Okay, because it's Tam Lefgan. It had the Safek, you had a Safek Lechara. You had a Safek Doraisa Legabe de Tarnegolet.
There was a Safek. It wasn't a Vadai.
Right, no.
I thought
Safek Doraisa, we started off Legabe de Tarnegolet. Right? And now we have a Safek Derabanan, apparently, in the Gdera itself. Because it's after 24 hours. So he brings down a Chuvas Marival that the Kli is also since the Tarnegol was a Safek Doraisa. even though now the suffix as it relates now is a Derabanan question, we started off with a suffix Doraisa. Remember, we're talking about how we start off. He learns that a din was already determined that this is a suffix Doraisa, so the Blias are also Doraisa, suffix Doraisa. Rabbi Kiva Eger, the Pri Megadim, hold that at least in Hefsem Meruv there would be mati here. In other words, it would be more lenient here after 24 hours, especially the suffix lo noida until after 24 hours, because they are saying that the suffix is really coming about, especially in the case of lo noida, now.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, we need to keep in mind also that there is a chiluk also between a very important chiluk between the Rashba and the Ran. The Rashba holds that the Kedera is Pgumo Minatorah. Right? In other words, you have an Isser Minatorah. The Isser there makes the Belia also Minatorah. The only thing is that it's Poigim the Tafshil. The Tafshil is a separate idea. When we come to the Tafshil is Pogum. But the Belia itself, you're starting off with the Doraisa. On the Belias itself, according to the Rashba.
So there will be irrespective of whether it's if it's a suffix or not a suffix.
Exactly.
You should say that in all cases.
In a sense, yeah. According to the Ran, the Balua itself, that which was already Nivla in Ekdera, is already Nifkam v'Nifsal. So therefore there's no Isur Torah. Basically, according to the Ran, our case here, the Shaila here, the Pisah Chubay, things would be easier if by learning the way the Ran learns. That the whole Blia is there's no Isur Torah on the Blia itself. Alright, it's just wanted to give you an example of how it would make somewhat of a difference how you learn it. How you look at it. When is the suffix created? Because the first one is an Isur Torah, and the second one is an Isur D'Rabbanan. Is it a really Isur D'Rabbanan? According to the Rashba, it's really an Isur Torah too. But it's just a tafshil that becomes nifkam, not the Blia itself. So the question is, of course, what would happen if you cooked in it later? What would happen? Are you allowed to cook at this spot right now? And so forth. Yeah. No. Right? You have a suffix. It's only a suffix. What kind of a suffix is it? All right. Anyway, Rabbi Kiva Eger also brings down another interesting situation, which is a little bit more relevant to us. You have a kli cheres. Is it still recording? Yeah. 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 A kli cheres. You know what a kli cheres is? Earthenware, right? You know what the problems of earthenware, Kalim, are?
When they get chips, you have to throw it away.
They get what? Chipped?
Yeah. That's the financial problem with earthenware.
If they become treif, you have to throw them away. You can't make hagala to them, right? You can't even use them for Pesach if they're chametz, depending on what kind of keli they are. But anyway, usually you can't use them. So Rabbi Kiva Eger brings down, based on what we've just said in his name, that if you had a kli cheres that was around for 12 months, a year, and you forgot, did I use it last year for fleishiks or for melichik, for dairy or for meat? Right? And he says, according to the Marival, that it would be mutter.
To use it for either.
No, wait a second. That it would be mutter to do what? Just take it and make hagala 3 times. Ashkenazi, by the way, use this method of 3 times with crystal on Pesach. Okay. Make hagala for it 3 times. Even though hagala usually doesn't help with kli cheres, over here it's okay.
Oh, we're talking about kli cheres. That's
right. Yeah. Here it would be okay after 12 months. After 12 months, there is a certain leniency in halacha, in hagala's kelim. After 12 months, like Kli cheres, there is an opinion that it's completely gone. So therefore, based on that, and you have a suffix, remember we're dealing here with a suffix, we're not doing this lechatchila, that you would be able to rely on this and make the hagala nevertheless 3 times. He says to add that, and then you could use it.
What was the suffix?
For either of the two.
What was the suffix? I didn't catch the suffix.
I don't remember if it was dairy or meat.
So then you're better off under those circumstances.
Right.
Some people, they have a suffix, they put it aside. But then they know it's a suffix. They would be better off to leave it in the regular dishes for the year.
No, here you don't know what.
Then they would have a suffix on whether it's this dish or not that dish. and whether they used it or not. But if they knew Vadai that they had traced it or done something wrong with it, used it wrong, and set it aside, then they don't have the suffix anymore, because they know that they had done something wrong.
No, they just forgot. Forgot, they put it away. They don't know.
We're talking about a klicheres.
Klicheres. Now, you know what this reminded me as I was looking at this tshuva? It reminded me of a question that came up years ago. I was asked this question. It's a question that can come up. Somebody inherited from his mother, or he inherited from grandmother, or, I don't know, they got a gift. Very expensive limoges. You know what limoges is? Very expensive china set from France. Very expensive, very special. They don't know if they kept kashrus.
They didn't know?
They don't know. The ones who inherited are not so sure that the ones who used this set of dishes were really 100% kosher in every respect. Basar, challah, food. They had a suffix. But it's been more than 12 months. Could there be a heter on us? Understand?
So this would apply, no?
Would it apply?
Three times hagol. Because why not? They have a suffix. Why not? Why would it not apply?
What is it?
As you mentioned, 1 year past 1 year and 3 times hagala.
Does it make a difference? Here the question is about basar v'chalav, and over there it's a question about tarfos.
And it's not a question.
We're all in agreement, by the way, that the time would be pogum.
No, pogum after 12 months is not even a question of pogum.
That settles a good deal of the question. If the time would be pogum and we only have a suffix here, then it should be the same. Right? Even though here it's a suffix basar, suffix chalav.
Well, it depends on which opinion you go by. There's an opinion that says that basar b'chalav, the bliya of basar b'chalav, is a basar b'chalav rule, and others who say basar b'chalav is a nevela.
Yes,
so chaticha nasa nevela. So nevela is a taruvos rule.
Because it's not happening. The blias are not happening at the same time. The basar b'chalav in some ways is easier because the bliya of one of them is already pogum. So now that you're introducing another one that may be the opposite.
I think it is the shach. I think it's the shach who says chaticha nasa nevela.
Right,
so it's a nevela.
You say by blias or not.
So the din that applies to this nevela, if it now in turn, the din that applies to it when it in turn answers something else is the din of Taaruvot and not the din of basar b'chalav. The other thing that becomes answer because of din of Taaruvot, not because of din of basar b'chalav. Okay. The Hanan itself is answer because of din of basar b'chalav. And there are others who say that no, even when it answers the rest of the things as an isser of basar b'chalav.
Yes, that's something else. But still.
But if it's an isser of Taaruvot, you would have exactly the scheme of 3 times hagala.
It is similar, and apparently you would be able to, possibly, according to this. Yeah. Okay, he continues on. I'm not sure if he does or somebody else adds that based on that, when it comes to Pesach, you have klicheres. You don't remember if you use it for dairy or meat, and it's a leap year. You had enough 12 months go by. Then you would be able to make a gala 3 times and use it for either meat or dairy.
What does that have to do with Pesach?
The Chassam Sofer, I think.
What does that have to do with Pesach?
Chometz.
So it's chometz, not basar b'chalav. What was the suffix here?
I'm sorry, it's not a question of chometz, but also 12 months went by, and now you don't know you want to use it for Pesach. It's nothing to do with chometz, actually. The only reason I thought of chometz is something else. During the time that we make hagala for chametz, there's a tshuva Chassam Sofer that says, by the way, that only for once a year are you allowed to change from basar to chalav, from chalav to basar, Pesach time. A whole year around, don't take your pot and on Monday use it for dairy, make hagala and use it on Tuesday for meat or something else, right? Don't switch it up because you may forget which one was last.
What's an issue? You're not allowed to.
No, it's not. It's not a real issue. You just don't do it because you're making good hagala. You're a caterer.
You're not allowed to do the latchila.
Why not? You are allowed to do it. No, there's no problem to do it. Don't do it a lot. Don't do it all the time because you may forget to keep track. Which one was it yesterday?
That's exactly because why they usher it. They're
why
it's usher.
Why they tell you not to do it?
Yeah.
Okay?
Just telling you.
Well, you shouldn't do it, right? But once a year, when you're anyway making hagala for getting to use it for Pesach, then even if you were using it for lasagna, milk, a whole year, you can use it now for meat on Pesach.
But it makes perfectly sense because the chumrah of chometz is even more a chumrah than.
No, not because of chumrah of chometz, just because you are allowed to make hagala now.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, but not because of chometz. Yeah, don't mix in. It has nothing to do with chametz. The halacha is you are making hagala anyway.
That's right.
Anyway, forget what the reasons are.
So you're saying two different things now.
Yeah.
So in other words, you're saying I'm doing hagala on those parts.
Right.
I have a part over there that I'm not planning to use for chometz, but it's a basar b'chalav question. So if I'm doing hagala on those parts, I'm allowed to take this one, latchila, to do hagala on it, to use it now for dairy, even though it was a meat part.
Right.
The ones that I'm doing hagala for chometz, after I did hagala for chometz, I can use them for anything anyway, immediately after chometz hagala, because the hagala for chometz certainly took also care of the basar b'chalav.
Yeah, but even though during the
aside.
year I would not be able
On the other part that I'm not allowed to do, that for basar b'chalav specifically I'm not allowed to do, here I'm allowed to do even if it's not a case of chometz.
Right. Even if it's not a case of chametz, I can do it because once a year, to do it for Pesach, it's possible. Otherwise, I will get confused if I start doing it too often. That's it. Yeah. So that was a separate tshuva. Yeah. Okay, now here we have an interesting question. We have a question that the Shach brings down on the Darkei Moshe. You know, we could go on to the next cloud, but I thought it was interesting, so I'm including it in this year because it really sheds a lot of light on things that we've already learned before. So the Shach asks a good question on Darkei Moshe actually this one is not for what we learned before. It's what we will learn soon in Kuf Yud Aleph. But it's the same thing. It's very interesting. Shach asks a very good question on the Darkei Moshe. What have we learned so far from the recent klolim? Basically, when you start off with something that is a deraisa and it ends up as a derabanan, it may not qualify as a safek derabanan l'kula, right? Because it started off as deraisa and it's coming as a derabanan from a different angle. He says, based on what we will learn in Siman Kuf Yud Aleph, there's a very interesting halacha in Kuf Yud Aleph that you have two pots cooking somehow on the stove. One is treif and one is kosher. They shouldn't be, but they are. You know, and a piece of treif meat fell into one of them. Treif meat. I don't know which one it fell into. There's roiv in the heter pot to cancel out just in case, right? Just in case that the iser fell into the heter, there is roiv. So what do we say? Okay, what?
How about the zeah that comes from the treif pot?
No, they're not in the same oven.
Okay.
They're on the stove.
Oh.
Zeah can be an issue in an oven-covered oven when the lids are off. You know, for frying pans that don't have any cover, no aluminum foil or something. Then you may have a question or problem with basar and cholov and with treifas and gab zeah. We learned a little bit about that. If it's shaman and not shaman. But anyway, so you have your two pots. One is kosher and one is nevela. And a piece of nevela fell into one of them, and I don't know which one. So if the heter of the kedera is greater than the chaticha nevela, we are toilin. Remember the famous word toilin? We make an assumption, lehakel, that it fell into the iser one. Even though it's min b'shein o minoi, it's liquid, and you need shishim, you need 60. Lefi shedvar Torah min b'mino bato b'roiv. Chachamim itzrichu shishim. They require 60.
Well, it's min b'mino, he says, batal b'roiv. So
Yeah,
it's min
liquid.
But there must be some other meat in there as well. Well, in the pot, in the permissible pot, there must have been some kosher meat in there as well.
We're talking about here that the chachamim are the ones that required shishim. In other words, in reality,
Right.
this
So that's min b'mino. Min b'mino
Right.
chachamim require
Exactly.
shishim.
It's a min b'mino. This example, the chachamim requires 60 because it's
Right.
min b'mino. Yeah. Why do they require 60? Because mevashel, you're cooking it. There's liquid. That's why min b'shein and min b'yavesh is also gzer d'rabbanan shemo yevashel. Right. So anyway, so min deraisa is bottom. We're making an assumption, as we've seen before. We sometimes make assumptions, right? The most incredible one was the case where we had that a piece of tray fell into a pot. It was in a pot, and then one of them fell into the sea. Right? We assume that's the one that fell. Of all the pieces, that's the one that fell. Yeah.
But only legabe chashivas.
Only gabe chashivas. Yeah, you still need drive. Yeah, you still need enough to be.
Yeah, and you need 60?
Yeah, or shishim, whatever. Yeah, make an assumption. That's the one that fell. We had siyata d'shmaya. Hashem help. That's the one that fell. He didn't want you to eat tarfas. All right, good. Anyway, the chachamim made this cloud because they're the ones that made the first cloud to begin with. That it would not be batal the elef even. So, If something happened, then you receive divine assistance.
But only that it lowered the threshold.
Yeah, it did.
Meaning to say, now you need either Roiv or 60. That you still need.
You always need that.
Yeah.
I heard they had a big bar mitzvah in Israel, and they were cooking for a lot of crowd.
Yeah.
And then the cholent, they said that a little bit milk spilled it, so they get one of these Arab cook coming
to taste it. Yeah, sure. According to the Mechaber, you're allowed to use a kafela. Yeah. You're allowed to have a cook, as long as he's not an Arab from Ramallah.
And then they had
It has to be someone. He's an Arab that knows cooking.
But then they had a Sephardi taste it after the Arab.
After the Arab,
Sure, because the Sephardi follows the Shulchan, the Mechaber.
The what?
The Sephardim follow the Mechaber.
Yeah.
So after the Kfela said you're allowed, he's now allowed to eat it.
Oh, he's not allowed to eat it.
And when he ate it and felt there was no taste, a Jew can rely on him. I mean, an Ashkenazi can rely on him.
Oh, I see. Now we want the Ashkenazi to eat too.
Yeah, of course. So the Sephardi was allowed to taste it because of the Mechaber. The Ramah says you're not allowed to rely on a Kfela, you need 60, but you can certainly rely on...
That will bring a Yemenite to
What is the heter for a Yemenite?
No,
I'm just wondering what his status is here.
You'll have a chazak.
No, but that's how it went. That's how the story went. That's how the story went.
Did it?
Yes.
All right.
But they didn't like it. There was a rabbi there who paskened like that, but they didn't like it.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's fine. It's perfectly okay, especially if I have some room, it's a big chasen or something like that. And we've learned those halachas. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, the Lemaisa, the Rabbanut didn't like that.
Yeah. Okay, so the Shach had a good question based on what we just said in Siman Kuf Yud Aleph, that we would make the assumption there that this Safek D'Oraisa, right, fell into the real Nevela pot, right? As long as you have Roy Peter in the other one, we're lenient over there because of Bitul Beroy, Midrabanon. He says, wait a minute. Over there, the Chaticha Nevela is also Midoraisa. Right? So the Ikar Issa over there is also in the Torah. And it's going down and becoming a question in a Derabanan. Follow the Shach's question? Very good. What did we just say? You start off with a Safek D'Oraisa that becomes a Derabanan from a different angle.
Mm-hmm.
You don't say Safek D'Orabanan Lekulo, because it starts off as a D'Oraisa. I have an example from Kuf Yud Aleph where it starts off as a Safek D'Oraisa. It's a Chaticha Nevela. I don't know which pot it fell into. I now have a Safek D'Orabanan because the pot of Heter has Roiv to be Mevatel. It's only a Safek in a D'Orabanan. I don't have Shishim. Okay? I have a Safek D'Oraisa. I have a D'Oraisa. Okay? I have a Safek on the D'Oraisa which pot it fell into. Okay, I make the assumption I'm lenient that it fell into the Asr pot. As long as I have a roiv on the pot of Heter, I say Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. I'm lenient on this.
I thought we said we're toilet that it fell into the Asr pot.
Yeah.
That's not a Safek D'Rabbanan.
Well, in a sense it is, because what we're saying is as long as I have roiv there, I'm safe, because it's a D'Rabbanan, the Shishim. So what he's asking the Shach is similar to what we've just learned. Well, shouldn't we say over there, or shouldn't we not be lenient there? We're starting off with a D'Oraisa.
No, but that's a whole
ending up with a D'Rabbanan.
But that's a whole different question. But that's a whole different question, no?
What?
Because over there,
Yeah.
the D'Oraisa was already taken care of. There is no remaining Isser D'Oraisa there. It's not because of a suffix. If it would have been a Vadai piece, because we can't identify which it is, and there is Roiv, the Oraisa, we're now allowed to eat it. There is no remaining Isser de Oraisa. So the only problem we have is a problem that originates in the Rabbanan who require 60. So there, in an Isser, so there I have an Isser de Rabbanan. The Isser de Oraisa didn't start as an Isser de Oraisa, it already ended as an Isser de Oraisa. There is no remaining Isser de Oraisa here that needs still to be justified with a suffix.
You're beginning to say something. It's
after 3 seconds, not bad.
They're obviously different because this is mutter and this is usher.
Right.
Right. But he presents it as a question.
Right.
Isn't this a good question? Over there, it's also starting off. You're starting off with what appears to be a deraisa and appears to be ending with a derabana. It says, but they're different. And here we have the following hesber. The Shach says that the yesoid of the dark emotion that we just finished saying, that starting off with the deraisa and ending up with the derabana, is like this. you don't say that it's a Safek D'Rabbanan when you have a Reusa Lefaneno, when you have a true problem in front of us. Reusa means something that has a disadvantage, something that is, what's a good translation of the word Reusa? Something negative, a true problem. I call it a true problem. When you have a true problem lefaneno. What's a true problem lefaneno? A Safek treifa, remember, I'm talking about in our case, a Safek treifa fell in. I saw it fall in. I even saw where it fell in. I just can't recognize it.
So if it falls...
It actually was there. It's actually in the pot.
So if it falls in, it looks like that they don't have no lids.
No, obviously, yeah. Yeah, it fell into the pot. I know it did. The Safek treifa, which is a Safek treifa, a real Safek treifa d'oraisa, which I have to be machmer on, it really fell in. It's a reusa. I can't say, I'm not sure if it fell in, right? I know it fell in. Now I have a separate question on the Rabbanan. Okay, so I have what's called a reusa. I have a problem. A real problem because I saw it falling in. Right? Now, in Kuf Yud Aleph, do I know for sure if it fell in or not? I don't know if it fell in. It could be never fell in the heter. I know it fell somewhere. I don't know for sure it fell into the heter pot.
But was it there a Safek d'oraisa, or was it a Vadai d'oraisa?
No,
in that
even a Vadai.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no difference, right? For our halacha, it wouldn't make a difference.
Why not?
Because they're both going to be an Isser. That is the Raisa, starting off as the Raisa, because we're trying to go on this issue of starting off and ending as the Ravana. So starting off as a Safek, Isser with the Raisa, or Vadai, makes no difference. But you see how there's a difference, and you're beginning to say that. You're beginning to say how they're different. Here, I don't have that kind of a Safek. I don't have a Reus, I should say. I don't know for sure it fell in. You're telling me it fell into one of the two. Fine. I don't know for sure it fell into the heter. Maybe yes, maybe not. But maybe they never fell in. Remember the case with the lion coming in? Right?
Yeah, with the nail.
With the nail, yeah. I mean, I don't know for sure if it came in. I don't know for sure if it fell into the heter. There I can be lenient. It could be there's no Isser Klal. On that you could say we are Mekel. Right. Even though you started off in a Safek d'oraisa. However, I like this another explanation. The Sefer Torah Shlomin.
Before we continue, quickly, let's assume the first one was a Vadai Isser d'oraisa.
Yes.
And the Vadai Isser d'oraisa fell Vadai into a pot that contains Roiv heter.
Right.
So now d'oraisa, in this pot, I have no Isser to eat from it. If I have Roiv heter, min b'mino.
Right. Only with the Rabbanon, you can't eat.
Right. But the oraisa, I have no.
But you don't have a Safek then.
No, I don't have a Safek. No, I don't have a Safek. But the oraisa, I have no Isser here if it fell in.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, I don't know if it fell in, and I have a remaining Isser d'Rabbana to eat it.
Right.
So I have a Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula.
Correct.
It's a whole different case.
That's right.
But here in our case here that we're discussing right now, where it doesn't apply, we're saying there is an Issa d'oraisa, and I'm trying to use I'm trying to use a Safek d'Rabbanan to be matir something that started out as an Issa d'oraisa and continues to be a Safek Issa d'oraisa. I'm sorry, as an Issa d'oraisa, as a Safek Issa d'oraisa, and continues to be a Safek Issa d'oraisa. It never ended its career as a Safek Issa d'oraisa. And I want to add a Safek d'Rabbanan to be matir the Safek Issa d'oraisa, which is something of a whole different story.
Which is a different Issa d'Rabbanan altogether, a Safek d'Rabbanan.
Right.
Anyway, Sefer Torah Shlomin on this question says like this. It says there's a big difference between the two cases. Safek treifa that is mixed in, the ikar Safek that we have is in the oraisa, if this chaticha is treif or if it's not treif. That is where our Safek lies. It lies in the piece. Right? Is this treif or not treif? What happened, however, is galgal. In other words, it started off as that, and now we have another question, another Safek surfaced that happens to be a d'Rabbanan. That is very, very different than Kuf Yud Aleph. In Kuf Yud Aleph, there's no Safek at all beginning, he says, on the chatichas of the Isser. The Safek never began. When does the Safek ever begin? Only when there is a nefila. When something fell.
Right. So in other words, he's talking about a Vadai Isser d'oraisa. And the suffix began when it fell, because I didn't know in which part it fell. That's when my suffix begins.
Exactly.
Right.
In other words, but it's not only because it's a vadai.
If it wasn't vital, you would have the suffix on the meat itself.
The mechanics,
right.
I don't have my suffix are beginning in the Derabanan over there.
Right. That's my point.
Yes.
Exactly.
See, right? That's why I told you to wait. But it's okay. Isn't this a nice chiluk? A nice way of looking at it. The Shach. What the Shach says is also right. I mean, the Shach says a little bit different. He says over there, right? It was a suffix d'oraisa. What did we say over there? Over there, it was a suffix d'oraisa, but it was a real reusa. We saw it fall. Here, we don't know if it fell at all. That's a very nice kilo. We don't know if it fell at all. There you have a reusa. The reason the Shach's svara is important is because of the next cloud of chazaka, which will not come. So it also is an acceptable differentiation. But the Torah Shlomo says very good too. It says the whole suffix here begins in the Derabanan. There's no suffix before yet. It's a Vada Yisra, like you said. It begins when there's a problem first created. When is that? When it fell. When it fell, it's a Derabanan. It's a Derabanan, suffix Derabanan Lekula.
Because of the Roiv.
Yeah, because of the Roiv. Based on what we just said, we have what's called the deja vu. What about what we learned in Tzadik Ches, where we have a treif falling in to a pot. We're about to measure if there's shishim or if there's roiv or whatever. We don't know how much there is. We know there's roiv, but we didn't have a chance to see if there was shishim, and it fell.
Spilled. You mean something spilled out of the pot.
And after spilling, we have no way of knowing if there was shishim or not, but we know there was roiv. So we're safe midaraisa. What does the Mechaber say? What's the halacha of their safed rabbanon lekulo? Right? Very interesting. Over there, we started off with the deraisa too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the connection?
So that's what I was saying
there
before.
We're starting, yeah.
It would misbattle the whole idea that if you have 60, you can eat it. You have a suffix on the rubber, on the 60, you can eat it.
Yeah. Over there, Elamai, over there, the real suffix is noilad when it fell. Okay, even though there appears to be here a problem according to the way the Shach learns. According to the Torah's Shlomim, it makes a little bit more sense.
Who wrote that?
I don't remember right now. Yeah. According to the Torah Shlomim, it makes a little bit more sense. It's a little easier to understand. The suffix is noilad, is only b'shas and nefila. We have a question, right? The other way, I mean, what would the Shach say? I mean, over here you have a reusa. If you have a reusa, you have a reusa there too. You saw it fall into the pot. It just spilled later.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say about that? I mean, I saw somebody ask that question on the Shach. What would the Shach say about that? Why over there everybody seems to say, okay, we have a suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. I mean, wouldn't we have a reusa there if it fell later? Why are we being so lenient by saying suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula?
According to the Torah Shlomim, as you say, it would work well over there as well.
Yeah. Sure. But it could be, this is where I'd like to say, is that the Shach also agrees to the Torah Shlomim too. I mean...
I don't see the point, actually.
Well,
excuse me.
No. It could be, I mean, for a different reason he says it. Over there, there's a difference, there is always a difference, by the way, between nishpach and non-nishpach. Nishpach is a chiddush. Remember we learned about kavua is a chiddush. There are chiddushim. There's something called toilin. A piece fell into the water. We're toilin. Siman Kufyud Aleph, we're toiling. This fell into the Rabbanan were lenient in some cases to say, you know what? It's the treif that fell in. It's the treif that disappeared. They're toiling. We say, called the porish, meruba porish. Because when you have a situation where you have a taruvus, you can't have it. The taruvus is also, right? It's also, it's a vadai. You don't have enough of a shear, of shishim. But what if you took out one from the bunch? There's a thing of called the porish, maybe. I mean, depending on the circumstances, where it's allowed and where it's not allowed. Not everywhere do we allow porish. So we are allowing some cases to say, listen, this came out of that. The one that came out is from the majority. The majority is kosher. So nishpach might be a different din, in one of those dinim, that the chachamim were lenient. To say, listen, I have no way of being mevarer it. I have no way of knowing now. It could have had shishim. I just don't know. The suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. Whereas as long as I don't have a nishpach, I could be mevarer it, And I have to be mevarer if I could. Sometimes I have to. And so long as I don't have a shishim, I don't have a suffix. Right? Here I have a new suffix. Now, even though I'm starting off with a suffix d'oraisa, and that's our question, and I'm ending up as a suffix d'Rabbanan, why would this be any more lenient than suffix treifa that fell into a taruvos? Why would it be any more lenient?
Over there it was a vadai treifa.
Not
only a suffix, a vadai treifa.
Over there it's a vadai treifa, and here's a suffix treifa. The vadai treifa is in a taruvos,
and something spills
and
out.
Here is a suffix treifa that is in a taruvos. But what did we say by suffix treifa in a taruvos that we're not matim Sfeka?
Right.
The Shach is the one that added that we would not be matir that suffix d'Rabbanan either. What?
Because of the how did you pronounce it? Rusa.
Yeah, but no, for another reason. We started off in Klal Yutes.
Oh, isn't that the case you were talking about right now, about the Shach with the Rusa? Or were you talking about a different case?
No, that we came back later, and to that we came right now. It's a separate thing. I'm talking about the first Klal, where he was saying that there's suffix treifas that began, which is a suffix that ended up as a Rabbanan. We don't say suffix Rabbanan kul. Not only don't we say Sfeka, we also maybe we should say suffix Rabbanan kul. So we said,
wasn't that the Ramah that said it as the
yeah.
Oh, the Ramah.
That was from that, yeah. So now we don't say suffix Rabbanan lekula. So even according to the Ri, you have suffix echad bekufa, suffix echad b'taruvos. There's no heter Sfeka. You also don't say suffix Rabbanan lekula. So we have to try to understand why not. What's the difference between the cases? The klal of beginning as a d'oraisa and ending as a Rabbanan is understood to us. But we saw an example of where it's not the same. We saw an example of Kuf Yud Aleph where it's the whole suffix is coming about at the time of Nefila. Okay? So what do we see from that? Over there we do have a vadai treifa, but there's a suffix coming about the time of Nefila. Okay? So, and over there, we don't even know over there if it actually fell into the pot.
That's the suffix,
which is a different suffix than our suffix. We don't know how much of it was. So could there be a difference between, or maybe there is no difference. Suffix whether there was an afila or not, and suffix here whether there was roiv or shishim. It's in a Rabbanan. Remember we learned the klal in the Rabbanan. Suffix the Chachamim were not makbid on suffix the Rabbanan. Why not? Because their gzera was not on Sfekas. Their gzera was only on Badai, right? Suffix the Rabbanan means they're not makbid on a suffix. Right? By the Torah, we are makbid. So, in the case of Tzadik Ches, we have a real suffix the Rabbanan. A real suffix the Rabbanan. We don't have a suffix legabe the tarfos. We have a real suffix legabe the Rabbanan. Why shouldn't it be mutter? The only thing we want to say, hey, but it started off as a deoraisa. Right? That's the only reason why we want to say that it's not a real typical. It started off as an ikar deoraisa. And we learned last time that there are some Sfeka d'Rabbanan that if they're somewhat related to a chashash of an Isser d'Oraisa, they don't allow it. You don't say lekula. Remember we had that. Like with the word goizer, by gvinas akum, by the cheese. There are some times that they tell us, even though you have a suffix about our Isser, you're going to leave it alone.
Fine, but here they didn't say that.
But they don't say that about bishul akum. They don't say that, by the way, there's a question about pas bottle. You come into a bakery, was the mashgiach here today or not? To turn on the oven. You don't know. He was nifter. You can't find out. So we can make phone calls. We can do all kinds of things to determine. You don't know. What do you do with all the bread? Maybe he was. He doesn't remember. Because he didn't go into one, he didn't go to the other, he doesn't remember which one. There's a suffix. It's a suffix in the Rabbanan, the Chara. The Chara, no? So why would it be different? But the Shach is telling us an important klal, that if you start off with the Doraisa, it's not always going to be a Rabbanan. But that's only if it's nisgalgel to an Isser Rabbanan, which is from a different angle, which is Taaruvot. Okay? So what was the problem with the one in here in Kuf Yud? You have a suffix treifa that, like you were saying, it has remained a suffix in the treifas. Nothing has made it any different. Now that it's in the Taaruvos, nothing has really changed.
If there was a roiv, then it would be this a whole different case.
Nothing has really changed here that created a new suffix. This is completely separate suffix. By nishpach, that's really the only major suffix I have. It's very different from here. It's very similar to the Torah Shlomim, but that's why I'm saying that the Shach would agree with it. It's not a separate suffix. The Shach is only against a suffix coming from a different angle, which is similar to a suffix in Guf and suffix in Taaruvot. You can't say Sfeka. So I can't say suffix Rabbanan L'Kula when it's a separate suffix D'Oraisa. I have a suffix in this, I have a suffix in this. Great, this is a suffix Rabbanan. No! It's a suffix D'Oraisa first. Here, I don't have a suffix in D'Oraisa. I don't have any Sfekas. I saw it falling into the pot. It's spelled. I just don't know if it was. I know there was Roiv. So the whole suffix is under the Rabbanan. So even though the Torah Shlomim fits in over there, I think the Shach would agree with it. I don't think the Shach would have a problem because it doesn't mean that that's the only scenario. He's only explaining Kuf Yud Aleph because Kuf Yud Aleph is a separate kind of scenario. It is a separate scenario. We don't know if it fell out at all. So the whole suffix is under the Nefila. Here you have a Reusa.
Reusa, that's the point I was waiting
right.
for.
Here you have a Reusa, and there you don't have a Reusa. You don't know for sure if it fell in.
Now, Reusa means there is the suffix, the oraisa, in front of your nose right now.
Right.
Over there in Sadik Ches,
right.
The Vadai Issa oraisa was taken care of.
Exactly.
It's not Reusa anymore.
Exactly. There's not a problem with that. My whole question concerns the Rabbanan. I have to focus only on the Rabbanan.
Right.
Everybody would agree. Subject to Rabbanan.
Yeah.
We'll stop over here.
Okay, very good.